Mongil Stardive, Netmarble's latest entry in the gacha game space, has been out for about a week now, and I've had the opportunity to put in roughly 30 hours to address the elephant in the room. Is this game worth your time? So, in this video, I'm going to break down my experiences with the game from my first impressions to what the experience is like after you've sunk some time in to give you an idea of what Mongil Stardive does well, what kind of an experience you can expect from playing it, as well as who will likely have the best time with it. With that out of the way, let's start with that first impression because honestly, it's a surprisingly solid one. Right out of the gate, you'll notice that there's a nice cartoonish stylization in the design of the world and characters. It's not hyper realistic, but I personally think it's for the better because of how it elevates the way that the story and cutscenes present themselves. They have this whimsical charm to them, with characters having a pretty wide range of exaggerated emotional expression and motion that help paint a picture of the personalities and quirks. As for the rest of the presentation, the voice acting really helped to bring the experience together. The voices of your main characters Verna and Cloud especially were phenomenal and always felt like they delivered lines that not only matched the context of any given scene, but more importantly, landed their comedic timing.
Verna!
Cloud? What are you doing over there?
Verna, look! A new monster! Save it, quick!
Should I just leave you there?
Save me too!
This is especially important since the overall story really leans in on its charm and humor, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The soundtrack and sound design for skills were pretty inoffensive. Nothing that I remember really jumped out at me for better or for worse, which also meant that nothing ever really felt like it took away from my overall experience with the game as well. All that to say, at least in terms of production quality, Mongil Stardive at least felt relatively on par with other games in the genre. Moving on to the combat, it's your pretty standard fare. At its simplest, you have a team of up to 3 characters that aim to wave basic attacks, skills, and ultimates to take out enemies. However, each character also has a combat talent to spice things up, like one of the characters I pulled, Penny, creates a coin, nice pun, after every third attack in her basic attack string. By picking it up, I can perform an enhanced skill to do way more damage. Where Mongil Stardive tries to mix it up even further is through their switch skill system. Essentially, every character also has a skill that can be activated when you switch into them, and by doing so, they'll do a nice chunk of damage and also leave your previous character on the field to continue attacking for a little. Lastly, although these switch skills have cooldowns, the cooldowns are instantly refreshed if you either perform a perfect dodge or a switch skill at the proper time. This in turn leads into a pretty satisfying flow of weaving skills and ultimates, switching to the next character, and then the next to trigger a perfect dodge and continue with the rotation. Now, you might have seen the game advertised as a monster taming game, and you also might have noticed that I haven't talked about that at all yet. Well, that's because, honestly, it's a bit of a stretch to call this game a monster taming game. Essentially, as you kill monsters in what are essentially dungeon hallways, more on that later, you have a chance at taming a monster which will leave a little ethereal outline of said monster. By collecting it, you turn it into a cute little keychain that you can then equip on your characters to provide them bonus stats. If you've played Wuthering Waves, it's a very similar system, which is also why I call it a stretch to call Mongil Stardive a monster tamer, since I wouldn't really call Wuthering Waves a monster tamer either. That being said, the monsterling system itself does have a bit more depth. As I mentioned, each monsterling you tame has a randomized bonus it can provide your characters when equipped. However, you can also fuse monsterlings together, which allows the fusion to potentially inherit a bonus from each parent, allowing you to try and breed perfect monsterlings for your different characters. Furthermore, specific monsterlings will allow you to create something called a link chain for them. Once crafted, assuming that monsterling is equipped to a character, if that character performs specific actions tied to the link chain like casting an enhanced skill, the monsterling will trigger their own skill to do a bit of extra damage. I wouldn't say it's necessarily anything groundbreaking, but it is at least cute to see the monsters you tamed appear on the field to cast their skill. Now, I've obviously been mostly positive up to this point, and I think that Mongil Stardive does a good job at making those first few hours honestly pretty enjoyable. However, there are some problems that start appearing that could make or break the game for some people. To start, although the combat system itself doesn't feel bad to play, at its core, it's more restrictive in regards to team building than you might think. Let me explain. When I say restrictive, I'm more so talking about the elemental weakness system in the game. Every monster has an elemental weakness, nothing crazy there. However, since all the elements are pretty self-contained in regards to the damage they deal, and for the most part the buffs they provide, if a boss needs a specific element to deal with their mechanics, you'll either need to swap in a weaker party member and mess up your team's existing synergy, or start investing in a totally different elemental team which will spread your limited resources really thin. Now, this becomes less of an issue as you spend more time with the game. You'd be able to build on multiple elemental teams for whichever boss you're fighting. However, time is the most limited resource for all of us. So why would you spend it building up a new account in a new game when you could just play your already established account in a game you like? That's the crux of the issue I feel with how Mongil Stardive handles its late game team building and challenges. Despite having auto battle features, it's not actually as respectful of your time as you might think. Again, the combat feels fine. I just don't know if people are going to be willing to stick around for the time it will take for them to get past that new account hurdle. That'll just depend on their subjective enjoyment of the game. Now, another system I could see becoming an issue for some people are the monsterlings. At present, it's a huge grind to try and get the passive skills you want on just one specific monsterling, let alone the 3 that each character will have equipped. For starters, the capture rate for the level 50 monsters hangs at around 25% even after food buffs, which is pretty low, especially because each time you combine a monsterling, it's not a guarantee that it'll rank up. This means you'll need to actively spend a lot of time running around hallways to try and tame monsters as fodder for fusion. And even then, it's also a 50-50 on whether or not the monster you get from the combination is the one you actually want, which is especially frustrating if you're just trying to craft one of the stronger boss monsterlings and the resulting combination ends up being the fodder. There's just a lot of layers that make the process more tedious than it needs to be, probably because it's a live service game, so people can't get perfect gear too fast, but still, I don't know if Mongil Stardive has quite found that middle ground yet either, and my worry is that it'll bleed too many players before it gets the chance to figure it out. Oh, hey, FutureBox here. Since recording and editing this part, Netmarble has actually released a couple of dev talks addressing some of these issues, especially the monsterling grind. While to my knowledge, these changes haven't happened quite yet, it is encouraging to see that they're not only also aware of the pain points, but are openly talking about them, especially because I feel at its core, Mongil Stardive is a pretty fun game. All that to say, taking in the good and the not as good, who is Mongil Stardive for? Honestly, if trying to min-max systems is your vibe, I could see someone getting pretty invested in the monsterling system, despite its flaws. Furthermore, if you're tired of fully open world gachas and want more of a theme park experience with level design and story, I'd say give it a shot and see how you like it. For the most part, this game has a side game feel to it, which fits the more linear world and story. So if you have the extra time and you're at all interested, this could be a nice fit if you're looking for something more casual or want a good laugh from the story. And with that, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the review, I'm planning on covering more of the gachas and MMOs coming out over the next few months, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss those. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Mongil Stardive so far, and most importantly, have a blessed day.